Darwin Platform Group of Companies is one of the fastest growing diversified Indian conglomerates with global footprints. It is setting up offices globally and tying up with companies across the globe from multiple sectors. The company has ventured into real estate and construction, stockbroking and finance, arms and ammunition, mining, airlines and many other sectors.
Hello and welcome to Business Today Television. I'm Siddharth Zarabi and you're watching Easynomics. On the episode today that comes just hours before the interim budget for 2024-25 is to be presented by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. We have heard Prime Minister Narendra Modi speak at the beginning of the budget session in Parliament, where he expressed robust confidence about returning and in fact his government presenting the full budget in July. A very interesting bite, and let's first take a quick listen into that.
आप तो जानते ही हैं कि जब चुनाव का समय निकट होता है तब आम तौर पर पूर्ण बजट नहीं रखा जाता है। हम भी उसी परंपरा का निर्वाह करते हुए पूर्ण बजट नई सरकार बनने के बाद आपके समक्ष लेकर के आएंगे। इस बार एक दिशा निर्देशक बातें लेकर के देश की वित्त मंत्री निर्मला जी हम सबके सामने कल अपना बजट पेश करने वाली है। साथियों, मुझे विश्वास है कि देश नित्य प्रगति की नई नई ऊंचाइयों को पार करता हुआ आगे बढ़ रहा है। सर्वस्पर्शी विकास हो रहा है, सर्वांगीण विकास हो रहा है, सर्वसमावेशक विकास हो रहा है। ये यात्रा जनता जनार्दन के आशीर्वाद से निरंतर बनी रहेगी। इसी विश्वास के साथ फिर आप सभी को मेरा राम राम।
Well, Prime Minister Modi there saying Ram Ram to all Indians and also giving out a very, very clear hint about what the interim budget is going to be all about, Disha Nirdeshan. And that Disha Nirdeshan fits in very well with the latest survey done by one of the foremost polling agencies in India, CVoter, that has done a very detailed exclusive survey of Indian consumers on the eve of the interim budget. And to discuss those very interesting findings, I am joined by Yashwant Deshmukh, founder of CVoter. He is also the editor-in-chief at the CVoter Research Foundation. Ram Ram, Yashwant ji, welcome to the show.
Absolutely. Ram Ram seems to be the season, not just for the politics, but also for the changing way that our budget is likely to be presented. So let's wait for that.
Absolutely. And you know, 2019 was also an interim budget, and many people seem to have forgotten that a couple of very important decisions were actually announced in that. And very interestingly, today, with just hours left for the budget presentation, an import duty cut has been done on mobile phone parts. But let's leave that all aside, because you have a very interesting survey that's been done, and I want you to first give us the brief overview before we go question by question over 6-7 questions and bring out those findings for our viewers who are tuned in.
Sure,
so what is the big picture that emerges out of this survey before the interim budget, Yashwant?
Well, Siddharth, just to let our audience understand this very clearly, this is one of those budget trackers that we have been doing for almost 20 years. You know, we do it two parts. One is expectation from the budget tracker, and then one right after the budget has been presented, we take the first reaction, which we also sometimes funnily call the budget exit poll of sorts, you know. So this is the part one of that study, and there is a very interesting timeline data to understand, the numbers in the right context of the time and the issues and the situation. However, looking at the data, many at times people try to make political things out of it, that how it is going to reflect in politics. That is something which requires much more nuanced understanding of how people tell about the issues and how people vote in an election. In other words, issues and electoral issues are two different things, and that we need to understand right up front. So, largely speaking, what I feel, what we found in the data, and we have been finding that thing in the Mood of the Nation survey, as well as our daily tracker, that the inflation is stinging. Inflation is a big issue. Middle class and the lower middle class and the lower class households are feeling the sting of that. However, this issue of inflation or having a problem in day-to-day running of their kitchen is not really reflecting in pessimism. It's not really converting into pessimism. Rather, there is a very, very strong, upswing about the optimism index, and that is something which is hopeful. I remain hopeful might also convert eventually into consumer confidence as far as their purchasing power is concerned.
Okay, Yashwant, that's a good summation. And we've been doing a pre-budget series of shows under the title 10 Years of Modinomics, and of course Modinomics 24, that big hashtag viewers for all our coverage of Budget Day. So remain tuned in. But let's take up some of those key questions that you have asked and the responses that have come, because viewers, the headline really that Yashwant himself has written in an article that is available on the India Today website is that optimism despite the sting of inflation. And that, by the way, viewers, is not something that's just come out through this survey. This is a very important sample. I can tell you that in Davos, and that was before the biggest event of our lifetimes as far as devotion is concerned happened in Davos also, there was a lot of optimism within Indian CEOs and foreign CEOs who are looking towards India. So optimism being that key message. So Yashwant, and we'll take this up one by one. We'll first bring up this graphic that is based on the question on price movement after Prime Minister Modi came to power, and this is from 2019 to 2024. You have there it on the screen. Yashwant, explain this to our viewers, because as I see it, prices have gone down. Lesser number of people feel that prices have gone down in the period, while as prices have gone up, the number has increased from 49 to 58. Explain this.
Exactly, and there is a very critical. If you look into only this year's data, standalone data, it feels like, 58% or 48% people saying that prices have gone up, they are not unable to manage it. However, when you look into the timeline, and there is a timeline of data even 10 years back, because 2013 was a very critical year as far as the inflation being an issue is concerned. At that point of time, this was almost like 70%, However, if you look into the thing, the timeline on your screen, Siddharth, you will realize that the impact of pandemic, COVID years between the first wave and the second wave and the post-pandemic period, you look into it, then you see that the 75 to 64 and 64 to 62 and 58, slowly and slowly, there are two things happening, Siddharth. Number one, that the sting over the years, in the post-pandemic years, that is going down. People are getting kind of used to it in that way, which may be a good or the bad thing. It's for the economists to decide. But pre-pandemic 49 and current 58 is bad, but it is not that bad that if you look into 29 and 20 figures when you compare to that. So what is happening over here, Siddharth, is that people are acknowledging and telling us, see, महंगाई कम नहीं हुई है, there is still problem. We are unable to make our household run properly, but they themselves are also, comparing it to the last recent few years, and also they are very much appreciative of the fact that the pandemic and the post-pandemic years are difficult years to manage, not just their household, but to manage the entire country and the world as well. So people are very, very sensitive about the fact that this is not a thing which only has hurt their individual household. This is something which is a black swan event which happened, and it has hurt the entire world, not just India or particular state in India or their household within that particular state. So that kind of appreciation is also there.
Absolutely. In fact, that's a good point that you make, Yashwant, that inflation has not just been an India-specific phenomenon, although the granular details of some of the inflation that we face is localized. Food inflation, for example. But the whole world and advanced economies that had never witnessed food inflation or fuel price inflation have seen that in the past 2 years. Let's bring up one more graphic, and then we'll also play out over 10 years how inflation has stayed during 10 years of Modi's rule. We will bring that up, but before that, the second graphic for you to consume, our viewers. Has inflation had an adverse impact on your life? This was the question that was asked by the CVoter survey, and that's the findings right there on the screen. Yashwant, explain this again. In this, from 2018 going up from 33 to 46 in 2024, and it therefore clearly means that inflation has had an adverse impact.
Absolutely.
People are saying that, Yashwant.
Absolutely, and this we have been reporting even in the the biannual mood of the nation that we carry for the India Today group. That people have been upfront about it. They have been telling, see, things are not comfortable. Things have been problematic at large. And honestly speaking, Siddharth, if we do not have been the food program run by the government post-pandemic particularly, and which has been now, made up a program for the next 5 years as well. I think that program itself has helped people a lot to fight this sentiment. If there would have not have been a proper free food program and during these years, I think we were kind of sitting on a kind of unimaginable disaster. So government was quite prudent in doing that. I hope they continue that program, because I am not one of those person who looks at the food program as a freebie program. I consider that the right to food is something which any developed country must be providing. And I don't know, still don't know. We talk a lot about the universal income scheme and other things. How exactly this should not be taken as a part and parcel of that. So this program has helped a lot people to ease through, to breathe easy.
No, that's a good point, Yashwant, because the free food program, which has now been extended and more or less is now part of life, it's permanent according to a lot of people, that has taken away even the talk for a universal basic income. But Yashwant, you see another graphic, and this is what we have worked on, and we'll keep this on the screen, and I'll try and request my producers if we can bring both the CVoter finding and this next to each other. Now you look at FY14, 9.38%, going down in FY19 to 3.4, and then going back up. And in your article on this issue, you have written, and I'm going to read that line, one can possibly describe Narendra Modi as a lucky Prime Minister. That is because his popularity continues to soar despite inflation playing havoc with the household budgets of ordinary Indian families. Now if we go back to the finding, we see there is an adverse impact. There is a dip in inflation, and that inflation has gone up in the past 2 years on account of global factors. So how does this square up? Is this because of the belief that people have in Prime Minister Narendra Modi? Is it because that other decisions and actions of the government help them forget the sting and pain of inflation as you describe it?
Well, if you pull out the August 2013 and January 2014 issues of India Today, of our Mood of the Nation polls done during that time, there was a very interesting part when we asked the people which are your biggest issue at this point of time. During that point of time, Siddharth, inflation and remain the top problems. But the number one problem between August and January 2013 to 14 became the issue of corruption. And at this point of time that we are talking, you know, on our daily tracker, inflation and unemployment, they still remain the top two. But the issue of corruption does not even come in the top 10 issues that people mention. Now, what happens is that people can bear a problem of inflation, their unemployment on those things, as long as they feel that government is trying to solve their problem. The moment there are issues of corruption and wrongdoings, they start coming up, people look at associate it with their suffering. The moment they start feeling like we are suffering because somebody else is getting rich by wrong means, that is where the angle boils over big time. So I think the issue of inflation, price rise, issue of running the as we call in Hindi, rasoi chalana mushkil hota hai, or running the kitchen of that, the household budgets, people can bear of that if there is hope for future. When people look around, when the respondents look around, look into the infrastructure, the expenditure the government is carrying out in the infrastructure building, they look into the large economics, macroeconomic trend, they look into the future perspective and see that, okay, these are the hard times probably for us, but whatever India is being built might be having a much better prospect for my children. And that is the hope, that is the optimism which carries them up. What happened in 2013 and 14, that optimism has gone for a toss. And the similar, for very brief 6 months period, Siddharth, that optimism went away even post-pandemic, post-COVID, that the second wave of COVID, when it that point of time, between January and, April 21 to approximately October 21, that optimism had hit the nadir again at that point of time. But people quickly came up, recovered on that once the vaccination program started. So yes, a lot of this data, people are upfront saying that we are facing problem, there are issues, life is not that easy, but they are very much high optimism, which is very unlike the 2013 and 2014 data.
Okay. Now, because Yashwant has touched upon several points which are part of other findings, I'll bring up two more data sets for you in quick succession, viewers, and then get Yashwant's views on that. The quality of the Aam Aadmi's life last year and the quality of Aam Aadmi's life next year. Now, let's take up last year. And here again, the data is for 7 years, that is available 2018 to 2024, and there are 3 categories of data that come up: improved, is the same, and deteriorated. Now, you can see as far as improved is concerned, that line, if we stay on it, the blue line on your screens, viewers, 2018 39 to 35, that's a fall, is same 19 to 30, so more people feel they are still there. I would call it a plateau, and deteriorated from 42 to 35. So fewer number of people feel that their situation in life, the quality of life has deteriorated. Yashwant, let me also play out the next year one briefly, and then we can toggle between the two as you give us this explanation. Now, how has it, what is the expectation for the future? Because optimism is the key buzzword that Yashwant Deshmukh mentioned right at the top. And next year, on your screen, the same blue line is the key line, will improve. 58 in 2018 has fallen to 42 in 2024. Will be the same, has more than doubled, and will deteriorate, stays the same, 28 to 28. So here again there is a clear shift. Now, in broad macroeconomic terms, people say that some of the negative impacts of the global slowdown will translate and GDP takes time to either slow or rise. How do we explain this in the simplest way possible, Yashwant? Is this that lesser people, number of people are optimistic in the near future, immediate future? Is that what this finding is?
No, in fact, if you look into the data very carefully, actually the number of optimism that in the next 1 year is 41% for the improvement. I think that in the graph somehow that is looking at the lower side. It should be the other way around. It is almost 42% saying that it is gonna improve. 31% approximately saying it's gonna remain the same, and about 28% saying that it's gonna deteriorate it further. So when you look into that kind of a number, you realize that number of people who are optimistic for the future is way more than the people who are saying that it's bad and it will remain bad of sort. So big number of people, if you club the top two, it almost like 70% of them are basically saying life is rough, but it will be better. It's rough at this point of time, but we are hopeful.
But Yashwant, isn't that the sort of leitmotif of the average Indian? That we are optimistic.
Yes, you are right. We are sociologically speaking, we are a contextual society. We are eternally, I always joke around this, we are eternally hopeful on that thing. But it's not always like that, Siddharth, because there are times in our timeline we have seen in the data when the political crises are happening, when there is a pandemic, there is a war, there is a natural disaster. In those times, the optimism index tanks, and it tanks like anything. It tanks so much.
And you have 20 years data. Yashwant, yes, go ahead, please complete your point. Okay, I think a bit of a bandwidth issue with Yashwant, but just to summarize, and remember viewers, this is 20 years of data. You are just seeing the most recent survey. And Yashwant, you were making that point. Go ahead, complete that point before we lost you briefly.
Yeah, I just like to say one point, that we are all aware of the skyrocketing approval rating of Narendra Modi as a Prime Minister, which all the surveys have been reporting, national and international both. But there was a 6 months period post second wave of COVID, when even Pradhan Mantri Narendra Modi's popularity rating also took a hit post second wave due to that kind of depression and that kind of negative sentiment after the second wave of COVID got over. It repaired eventually, but I'm just trying to make a point that there are times in our life and in the life of society at large that these numbers go up and down, and even the eternally optimist Indian society says that things are bad and they don't think that things are going to be good anytime soon. This is different, that was different.
Okay, there are three more sets of data, viewers, and we'll take the personal income and the expenditure one back to back. The first one, the personal income in the last 1 year. Now you can look at that, and Yashwant, step in and explain this, and I wonder if you can easily recall the same question and responses in previous surveys with the latest data.
We can recall that. But I can tell you the broad context of that, because people at this point of time who are saying that income did go up, but the expenditures went up well, so it was more of a status quo. Some reported income is the same and expenditure has gone up, so that is 45%. That is where people are saying we are uncomfortable. There are still 18% people or households who are still not out of the post-pandemic situation. They are reporting their income actually is still below the pre-pandemic levels and the expenditure have gone up. So if you look into the situation, almost 60 to 70% people or households would be reporting that they have issues, they are unable to make a balance of their income and their expenditure at this point of time. Approximately more than every fourth household are kind of saying they are comfortable, and that is the upper middle class kind of thing, where they think they are managing it okay. It's still nothing to worry as such, but big number saying it's worrisome. However, when you look into this data, right, say 3 years back, post-pandemic situation, almost like 80% of the households were saying that this is a complete disaster. There is no way that their income and expenditure is gonna meet, because almost 80% was saying that income has gone down big time. Big number of saying that on the bottom of the pyramid saying there is no income at all. And if you compare that to 2013 data, you will find that even without pandemic, Siddharth, that's a very, very interesting point to understand and underline. Even without pandemic, the depression level was the same. The negative emotion was the same as we had seen post-pandemic numbers on this particular.
That on account of the fact that that was the peak of the sort of corruption, Anna Hazare, 2G, Coal G, depression
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. You are right. You are absolutely right. That was a depression. However, that was a depression against the governance. This was a depression on the pandemic, on the account of the pandemic. And once the pandemic period went away, then the recovery, some call it V shape, some call it K shape. Those kind of, I won't say any of these things is a complete truth, but there are some element of truth in each of these arguments. There are various sets of India within our India as far as economic situation is considered. There is a set which says that they have seen a V-shaped recovery. There is a set which is saying we are doing fine, but we are worried about the increasing gap between the rich and the poor. We are worried about that how many people are unable to sustain, and they need the free ration. That worry is okay. I understand that, but at the same time, almost every fourth household saying that, okay, we are good, we are fine. But every second household is saying, you know what, income-wise, it's fine. It's okay to continuing the same kind of income bracket that I am earning right now, but my expenditure has gone up. And almost, you see the number 62% household. It's almost, when I added up, I told you that about 60% plus people. That's the same kind of number saying that it is difficult to manage the kitchen at this point of time. So either the inflation needs to be further controlled, the prices need to be further brought down, or somehow their income levels have to be taken up. Now, this emotion is not just from the middle class, this emotion is from the bottom of the pyramid as well, Siddharth. And this is important for us to understand, because, from the consumer's perspective, from the market's perspective, people buy only when they have surplus income. And Siddharth, if you look into the...
But if I may add, Yashwant, just to add to that, very important, people buy when they have surplus income, but people also borrow heavily when they are optimistic about the future. And that's what we are seeing. Both secured and unsecured credit. In fact, on the unsecured front, we are seeing a boom where even the regulator has had to step in some ways.
Exactly. So there is an expenditure on that account. We can also look into the sales of the automobiles, where the four-wheeler sales might have seen a smart recovery, but the two-wheeler sales are still not into the same zone that the industry expected that to be. And that tells you, the segment which is upwardly mobile segment, which would say that, okay, we have trouble, but we are not going to hold on to our dreams of owning up that four-wheeler. But the bottom segment, which wants to go for that two-wheeler, that is still holding up, because they feel that they still do not have that much of extra to go for that kind of splurge.
Okay.
Unless this inflation is a bit more comforted, bit more into control, and we have surplus money, a little bit of surplus to this lower middle class segment, that will ease them up to go for that next boom of purchase.
Right. One more point before we then sort of take the big takeaways once again, and this is the question on how has the centre delivered on the economic front. Has the government of the day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government, delivered? And again, let's bring up that graphic that we have for you on the screen. We are taking from 2019 onwards, second tenure of Prime Minister Modi. Better than expected, just as expected, worse than expected. Yashwant, explain these numbers.
Well, I think clearly there are 2 or 3 pointers. If you take the data even before 2019 in the first 5 years and start comparing with 2013, there are one takeaway that even though the opposition and big number of counter economic argument holders, they say they remember Chidambaram Manmohan Singh duo as the dream team on economics. Public of India doesn't think it that way. They very well clearly said that Mr. Arun Jaitley's combination with Prime Minister worked better, and at this point of time, the Nirmala Sitharaman and Modi combination is actually scoring over Arun Jaitley and Prime Minister Modi combination, and that is something for the finance minister to probably be happy about. She might also would like to keep in mind that the baseline of expectation was quite low in the post-pandemic era. However, people feel that given the constraints, given the situation, and there is a gender equation, by the way. There is a much bigger number of female respondents who say that Nirmala Sitharaman has been way better than what people were expecting her to do, and she is less appreciated than what she deserves to be appreciated. That's what the big number of majority of the female respondents have been telling.
And there is one more occasion tomorrow for the nation to appreciate what she has done and what she will announce. As Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, Disha Nirdesh, clearly this is going to be one more chapter in a book which is still being written. Several chapters, in fact, 2 adhyayas, if I may say, that have been written. A third one is set to be written. Before I let you go, Yashwant, one overall view. The final point, economic distress of the kind, as the survey captures, primarily on the price front, is not translating into political distress. You make that point. We also saw how inflation has performed. We know the 2013-14, the last years of Manmohan Singh. What is the current mood as far as the political situation is concerned? The market seem to believe it's a done deal, a third term for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The question is only, क्या अब की बार 400 पार? Explain this for our viewers.
Well, in the 15th August issue of MOTM for India today, we had said that at that point of time, BJP was clearly ahead. Numbers were on its own 272 plus, and certainly with the alliance partners way ahead. We are right now number crunching for the issue which is going to come within the next 6 days actually, and the numbers will be out, so I can't comment on that number. But going into the recent political upheaval that we have seen, it seems like that that BJP and the leaders of the BJP are playing much more pragmatic politics than the India alliance. There are clearly big issues of India alliance partners. We have seen that at play. Nitish Kumar flipping, Mamata Banerjee saying we are not contesting with the Congress and the left. Akhilesh Yadav offering 11 and Congress being unhappy about it. So all said and done, this is going to be an interesting fact. If there would have been an aggressive opposition like the BJP, which used to play very well as an opposition at that point of time, then many of these issues would have propped up in a different way. But I think most importantly, Siddharth, above and beyond everything else, this is an era where the personal trustworthiness of Prime Minister Modi is the biggest factor in this country that people are counting on. I think people are just appreciating the way he is working hard. People are just appreciating the way that he is taking the decision, and people are appreciating the way that he is taking the people along in taking those decisions. So they are actually owning up his decisions, good, bad, and ugly, all three of them. Let's not even go into the demonetization and its effect. But when we ask people even today about demonetization, they say it was a wrong decision, but taken with the right intent. Now, this I think is unheard of. This is a very weird thing where which reminded me of my physics professor in my school years. He used to give us marks on how much we are trying to attempt the numericals. It's not about getting the answer correct. So somehow the public of this country is not only looking into the bottom line, public of this country is also looking into efforts the person is putting into. And that kind of political capital, or trustworthiness, that is an unbelievable asset that is coming very handy to the BJP.
Absolutely. And Yashwant, as we end this conversation, you remind me of the point that I think bears repetition, which is that budgets can come and go, but when Prime Minister Narendra Modi says कि ये मोदी की guarantee है, I think the connect that people have with that statement is actually translating into political results for the BJP, and we will soon have occasion to see how the political part of the economy will overcome some of the distress that inflation and other problems have caused. Yashwant Deshmukh, thank you very much for that exhaustive explanation of your findings and sparing the time to take us through this survey on the eve of the interim budget. Viewers, thank you. We'll be back with more. Until then, goodbye.
Darwin Platform Group of Companies is one of the fastest growing diversified Indian conglomerates with global footprints. It is setting up offices globally and tying up with companies across the globe for multiple sectors. The company has ventured into real estate and construction, stockbroking and finance, arms and ammunition, mining, airlines, and many other sectors.
In today's rapidly evolving business environment, when risk is omnipresent, managing risks is no longer just about ticking a few boxes. Businesses need to maintain a panoramic view of risks to stay ahead of the curve. Join us to explore how organizations can rethink risk to unlock new possibilities and become fit for future. At PwC presents De-Risking the Future in collaboration with Business Today. Celebrate 32 years of leadership in business news with Business Today. From the groundbreaking AI cover of Sundar Pichai to PM Modi's exclusive on G20, we redefine headlines. Now our 32nd anniversary issue explores India 2029, the 5-year agenda with industry titans sharing exclusive insights. So, just BT it for unparalleled perspectives. Business Today. 32 years of leadership, innovation, and business brilliance. Subscribe now.